recognized, how many saw the poster that we did for this event? How many saw that it wasn't the Swan on there? So hey, just another part of the mythology around the Swan. But thanks to Frank Holmes, like a lot of the information that we had on the Swan that Jen was able to present tonight comes from some of the articles that Frank wrote. Frank, how close were we to making that come true?
All very good. Special thanks, Windsor Climate supplied all the big barrels that were filled by the divers.
Do you want to come up here, Frank, so everybody can hear you?
Only one more sentence.
I was trying to stretch this out in the hopes that Art would make it.
And I believe it's one of the supers was very good going daily to help Art in restoring it over in the shipyard in Falcon Beach.
Yep.
Very good helpers.
Okay. Just waiting for Art to show up. For those of you who came in late, there's been an accident down at Angel Rock, and Art's caught in traffic. So he could be here in half an hour, he could be here in 4 hours. So, but anyway, we'll just keep going on here. Okay. Let me talk about what we did with the Swan up to this point. I was back in, I can remember we were down at the Workshard back in November of 2015, and Paul McDougall, and Paul sadly has passed now, but Paul was working on the Tatoosh, and I think I was standing beside David Whitworth or David Cox, and one of the Daves said, I understand that the Swan has been, the Industrial Heritage Society has been approached to take on the Swan. And the Industrial Heritage decided, well, we don't deal with boats, although they have lots of boat motors down there, but they don't deal with boats. So it was then that it came to me that I should get a hold of Art Skipsey right away and see if we couldn't get him to donate it to Maritime Heritage. And he was happy to do so. So we met Art down at his property out at Sprout Lake. I think David Whitworth was there again, and David Cox. And we took a look at this iconic vessel and said, wow, that's something I think we can use down at Maritime Heritage. It would be quite an attraction to get that happening. So sometime late in November, I can still remember the Swan coming across the lake with the members of the Skipsey family in the boat. There was his 2 sons and Joe's wife, I believe. And it was a foggy day, and it was like, you ever seen that movie Gorillas in the Mist? It was like a gorilla coming across, because they had to tow it, and but it was kind of interesting to see it. So we actually had to get a ship moving company from Campbell River to come down and move it for us, because the hydraulics on it, on the trailer that he brought, actually fit the Swan. So we didn't, any trailers in town, the hydraulics were too wide and they couldn't get a good grab on it. So Bowline Towing came down from Campbell River. We managed to get it down to Harbor Key. And for the first year, it just kind of sat there with a white tarp on it. I believe the tarp belonged to John Douglas. And because of the wind in that down there, how many have had a chance to go down to Harbor Key on a windy day? Well, the wind just blew the white tarp to shreds.
Yeah, if anybody wants to shred it apart.
Yeah, right. So get a hold of John. And so we put the tarp on for that first winter in December, January of 15, 16. And then I guess it was in May of that year of 2016 that I approached McLean Mill about getting some of their lumber from there. And we got a good deal on a lot of yellow cedar for the posts and beams and stuff like that, and had them move it down to where it is now, down at Maritime Heritage. And it was then we had to get a hold of somebody that would contract the work, to do the work. Maritime Heritage is a not-for-profit society. We have no money. All that we're really good at is begging and crawling on our hands and knees. So I approached a good friend of mine, Sandy Fitzpatrick. How many here know Sandy? Sandy, he might have taught some of you here. But Sandy was up at, is a good friend of mine now that I found out that his wife and my wife are are best friends. So Sandy agreed to do it at no charge to us. So he put in many, many hours in designing the shelter that's down there right now. And so whenever he needed volunteers, I would get a hold of Jack Cook and Dave Cox and Paul Amos. I see Paul's in here tonight, Kenn Watson. There's a whole bunch of volunteers that are helping out to make this thing a reality. It was about a year that it took us to get that shelter up, because here again, we're working with volunteers. Volunteers love to go on holidays. Volunteers love to go drinking beer. Volunteers love to watch hockey games. So trying to get them all together at the same time posed a bit of a difficulty. And it was only through my persistent emails and phone calls that we were able to get it to the point where we got the beams up, the poles in place, and the only contract work we had to do was to get the tin roof put on. And a local company in town came forth and put that roof on. And it is what it is today. Instead of we used cables to tie the beams together. We had Jack and Jeff up in the roof, tying all the rafters together. I was on a scaffolding a couple of times, but I almost fell off. Heights aren't my thing. I never used to own platform shoes because they were too high. I'd get dizzy and whatever. So at the present time, we've got another supplier that has come forward in the name of Pat Price. I think you all know Pat. Pat is married to Jean McIntosh. And Pat has his own mill. And he's given us a really good deal on some additional wood, because we're in the process now of building a crib for the Swan. We should have probably done this a long time ago, but we wanted to get it was more important to getting that shelter over it to protect it from the elements than it was for getting that crib underneath. But the crib is being developed. It's being put under there as we speak. But here again, football season has come along, and Sandy's had to take a couple of holidays or go get his lawyer and go to divorce court. So we didn't want that to happen. So I was hoping Sandy's not here tonight, is he? Okay. Sandy lives at the lake, and he's very much involved with a whole bunch of things on his property out there. But Sandy's been really good about helping out whenever he can. And we managed to get through the building inspector. The building has been approved, and thanks to Kenn Watson for arranging all that, and that's been approved. And so now we're just in the process of building the crib underneath, and also a viewing platform. The viewing platform, I understand, if it's only 2 feet high, we don't have to go through so many regulations with regards to fencing and all that type of thing. If you just build it up 2 feet, we're allowed to use that. So that's going to be on the other side, on the south side of the Swan, and it'll be high enough that people can kind of peer into the boat, but we just don't want anybody going inside. We want to make sure that people can't get in there and do damage or whatever. So that's where we're at right now. We kind of have had a three-prong approach to getting this to work for the Swan. One of them was getting the Swan in the first place. The second was getting the shelter built over it. And the third is getting the viewing platform and the crib underneath it. And our fourth platform is to recognize all those people that volunteered with us over the last 3 years to make this happen. And it's happened. This is an iconic vessel, probably in the 1890s, and it's steam powered. It was steam powered. We're certainly not going to fire up the steam engine or do anything with that, but we are probably going to do something with the whistles, get a compressor, and I don't know how many people are from Sprout Lake that have heard that whistle go. When it does blow, you can probably hear it down at City Hall, which is why we're going to blow it all the time down. So they know that we're alive and well. Okay, Any questions, from the floor that people might, and there's people in the audience here that know more about the Swan than I do. Any questions, John?
I was just gonna mention, I couldn't help watching, Suki Campbell came into the room here, and he was a big help for us.
Oh, yeah,
Update.
yeah.
You had a fellow helping him out, I can't remember his name, but,
Yep.
hoisting the timbers,
Yeah, right.
all that stuff.
Here again,
They couldn't have done on their own.
Here again, working volunteers, I don't know why the good Lord made us all so short. So we couldn't lift these timbers over our heads. So we got a hold of Soupy, and Soupy came down, and boy, within, I guess, about an hour and a half, all the beams and that were in place, and Soupy said, hey, it's on me. That's the kind of guy Soupy is, and we certainly appreciate his time. And we had a lot of other, companies and that volunteered, rope, cables, things like that. So we're fortunate in having all those folks around.